Do you have the chat? But you have the chat room on the right.
Yeah,
I have the chat room on the right.
Okay.
But I see if I hit it's really interesting. Yeah, I can see like there's a little slash next to the send a message thing, which allows me to do a whole bunch of different types of messages. I can go full screen, which I think is going to give me, I don't know what it's, there we go. See, it doubles it up. So now I've got an echo thing going on. I see. So
all kinds of fun.
Second. I'm gonna close this.
I guess this is what happened while Mike was off traveling. They changed.
Yeah, like Mike's traveling. We got to change everything and confuse them.
See, so here's what you have to do. Hectic Dad is in the bottom. Go to the there's a little at the bottom of the new interface. It basically would be right above where Nazash is. You'll see like the little blow it up to full screen. What it does is open up a brand new window. So that's why I left the call for a second, because I closed the little smaller interface and now I'm back in the old interface.
Isn't that strange?
It's hey, it's beta.
That is strange.
Mine looks the same as it did last time I was on.
Yeah, now I can see the questions on the left-hand side, and I can tweet it out now. I could do all that stuff. But before,
very cool.
You can't do it from. But what I did see, Nick, was I saw your profile at the bottom.
Okay.
So at the bottom of the page, you could see like your whole profile. So I don't know.
Yeah. Hey, look, we'll get through this, guys. We'll get through this.
Yeah. Hectic. Just go to blow it up to the full screen, and you'll be in much better shape.
All right. Well, so Jeff, I think Hectic Dad is Jeff, and he was asking the question. I think last week we started getting this discussion about lists versus calendars, and my wife here is just a calendar junkie. She loves using calendars, and she doesn't necessarily. Now, I don't want to speak for you. You can speak for yourself, but not necessarily believing in lists by any sort. So we've had this discussion for a while because I do a little combo. I think task manager list type thing, and I am slowly becoming converted more to using just less list whatsoever, just kind of getting rid of that whole philosophy of using a list whatsoever, even like, David Allen someday maybe type situation, maybe just getting away from that because it really does kind of weigh me down, mentally. So we were having that discussion. I'm not off of lists or anything like that, but I want to kind of feel you guys out and get your opinion on where you stand. I've been creating this false rivalry type thing that isn't even, it's all completely fictional in my head, of course, but just a calendar. Yeah. Are you a calendar person or a list? You can't have both. But
you should have had the wrestling mania music playing.
Yeah, some kind of wrestling. Yeah,
that's true. That would have been good. That would have been really good. So I don't know, Sash, do you want to explain your philosophy maybe, because you kind of kicked this thing off with how you feel about calendars and such?
Well, I mean, I think at some point I was a list person, and the problem I had is that I'd have this list, but I didn't really earmark any specific time, day or time in which to actually accomplish a specific task or project. And so I just found that it was like, it was basically I had to rely on my memory, right? Or take a look at this list and, say, okay, well, I'm going to try to get that done today at, 11 o'clock. And then 11 o'clock rolls down, it's not on my calendar. I didn't get a reminder. And I think, ever since having Carter, who's now 6, I've really have my memory shot after 2 kids. I've realized, and working full time, that I just really need to put things on my calendar. And so I, pretty much put everything I can. I mean, work related on the calendar. Absolutely. I put tasks I need to accomplish, personally on my calendar. I identify a time and day. I try to do theming. I've talked about my, toilet Tuesday, wash Wednesday, tub Thursday.
Those are fun names. Yeah.
So, and I put that on my calendar, mentally I know that, but I like getting the reminder because sometimes I'm distracted and it's like, oh shoot, that's right. It's Wash Wednesday. I got to fit that in. Like today I fit it in before I got on the blab while the kids, we had like an hour while, they went down and we had the blab. So I'm like, okay, well, that's what I got to focus on. So the only time I use a list at this point is on the weekend. Sometimes I find that, suddenly I have a block of time, available, and I'll say, I didn't write anything down. There's like DIY projects or little things, and I'll kind of say, okay, realistically, what can I get done in this hour? And so I'll write that out on a piece of paper. And then as I get things done, I mark it off and then I toss the paper. So that's really all I use a list for, is in those kind of situations.
Like a temporary, like, holding place until you actually
do because it, right? I think I'll get distracted. I mean, it's just, I got to get it out of my mind. And if it's on a paper and I have, an hour or two, it's like, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do now. I'm not going to whip out my calendar, and do it right now. But honestly, that's rare that I even use that type of process.
So, I mean, I guess just in concept, though, and I've learned from Laura and Mike, I've learned a lot about tools. I'm always just like a concept type of person, from a productivity perspective. I'm an engineer, yeah, but I kind of hate tech a little bit. And I know it's going to be like a blasphemy type statement with you guys. Like, I really get kind of bogged down with tech sometimes. So I really try to stick to as basic as I possibly can. It's kind of how I've been doing things. But I just want to get your opinion. Obviously, I'm a project manager too, so I'm a PMP guy. And when it comes to managing projects, I know you use Asana, Mike, and I can't remember what you use, Laura. But I've been in corporate for 14 years, so I use Microsoft Project. That's what I know. It's just how I've been, raised in corporate has been completely, I don't know.
Bless your heart.
Institutionalized.
Bless your heart.
But yeah, I want to learn from you guys, just get a good understanding for how do you manage that stuff? Because I'm seeing when I have a list, I've had lists for a really long time, but it really does bog me down. And I like Natasha's discipline. You're very good, from a mindfulness perspective. If it's not something that you want to do or commit to, you're I'm just going to put it out of my mind. I can't necessarily do that because it's this piece of me that says, I want to hold on to this to kind of decide if I want to do it someday. But when that builds up, it becomes unproductive for me. So I just kind of want to get your opinion on it. If you're a calendar person, is the use of a calendar, do you guys use it just for non-negotiables, things that have to happen? Or do you have a way to build in a little bit of wiggle room, a little bit of buffering? What do you think?
Laura, why don't you go first?
Well, we've traded some messages on Facebook about that. I mean, for me, a calendar is for appointments, which I define that as something that can and must be done on a particular day at a particular time. And I make appointments with myself if I've got a project that I want to carve out time to work on it. But I don't put, other than those kinds of appointments with myself, I don't put tasks or projects into my calendar. As I said in the little Facebook conversation, to me, that's too much clutter in my calendar. And if it's something that doesn't really have to get done at 2:00 on Tuesday, the brain knows that. And it sort of makes the calendar less meaningful because, you can ignore it all because, so for me, I use a digital task manager, but the calendar is just for truly time specific stuff. And I don't know, Mike, we've talked about this some, but.
Well, and I have a hybrid solution to this. So I don't think tasks should go in a calendar either, but like Nazach said, I like to have themed days.
Right.
So I'm a big believer in the idea of theming your days. Now, my days are probably a bit broader when it comes to theming than, Tub Tuesday, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But when I look at my calendar, because I do have a wall calendar right here, the Now Year calendar, which I actually co-developed with the guys from New Year. At the top of each of the quarters, so it's divided up, basically January through April, and then there's May through August. Laura, you have one too, don't you? Do you have the vertical or the horizontal?
The horizontal.
So it's divided up into three different blocks of 4 months. So at the top, you have a place where you can write your daily themes. So my daily themes are: Monday is writing, a writing day; Tuesday is a writing day; Wednesday is audio video work; Thursday is admin; Friday is learning; Saturday is family; and Sunday is founder / leadership day. And so what that means is those days, it just gives me an overarching focus for that day. It doesn't mean that the only thing I focus on Monday or Tuesday is writing, but it guides my task management solution to kind of put things in those slots or in those buckets.
Okay.
So, for example, today is Wednesday. So the majority of my work today was built around the podcast and any video work that I'm doing. And again, I had emails to answer. Obviously we're doing this right now. I had dinner to cook, which I did, and then headed straight downstairs so I could do this. And of course, power going out made it a bit of an issue.
I'm glad you got on.
But the point is, we made it an issue for dinner more than this, to be honest. But the point is that having those themes gives my brain something to look towards. So much like Laura says that your brain knows at 2:00 in the afternoon on a given day that you don't necessarily have to do that thing. If you give yourself a broader picture of Wednesday being audio video day, or Thursday being, toiletry shopping Thursday, or whatever it's going to be, your brain will gravitate towards, okay, I know what this is. So you want to give your brain these clues because like you said, Nick, if you keep adding these things to either your calendar or your to-do list, if you don't have any way of closing, as David Allen would say, closing those loops or checking in with yourself, then what happens is you get overwhelmed, whether it's, by using your calendar, or whether it's by just having this massively long someday maybe list, as David Allen would call it. So I think having those allows me to make measured progress on all of those major areas every single week. And then, I segment my to-do list by modes. So working by project is often important, but I trust mode-based work. So if I'm looking at Monday and it says, Monday is writing day. Well, what kind of writing can I do? Well, let me look at the different types of writing I do. Newsletter writing, blog writing, book writing. Let me look at, again, audio video day. Okay, what audio do I want to work on? What video? So it really segments my to-do list into manageable chunks, which is, I think, what you want to do to make measurable progress and be really productive, as opposed to just trying to do as much as you can in a given day and jumping all over the place in the process.
Well, and I was going to say that one of the things I like about the theming idea is it gives you permission to be okay with not doing certain things on some days. If it's Wednesday and you're not writing, that's okay. You don't have to feel bad that you're not writing, because writing is Monday and Tuesday, or whatever. Yeah. And so there's some real value in that.
And it's going to come around again. That's the other thing. Is your brain doesn't go, I don't have to do this today. It's going to go, wait a minute.
When am I ever going to do it?
Right.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, I know that. But it requires discipline, and it requires you being proactive. And that's the key. And I think that if you put everything in your calendar, and I know guys like Chris Ducker and a bunch of people, they schedule every moment of the day. Greg Hickman does it. There's a lot of people that do it. And my problem with that is that you don't leave any room for any kind of emergencies or something to come up along the way. Right. So I call it the About a Boy syndrome. If you've ever seen that movie About a Boy, this guy, the main character, Hugh Grant played him in the movie, he basically scheduled like every day in 50-minute increments. And then all of a sudden, and we're all parents here, the boy showed up. And when the boy shows up, that throws everything out of whack. So you have to have that flexibility there, because if you hyper schedule yourself and you miss some things along the way, that causes stress. And then that stress, all of a sudden compounds. So you want to have like flexibility. And like you're saying, Nick, you want to have it simple. You want to simplify it as much as possible. So by having these, like, you waking up on a Monday, and instead of saying, oh, it's Monday, I wonder what I'm going to do today, it's going to be, oh, it's Monday, it's writing day. Okay, what kind of writing am I going to focus on today?
So there's some grace there, I guess, as far as giving yourself the freedom to decide. So you have, sounds like you just have a lot of different types of theming work, or whatever work theme you're doing. It's that you have a bunch of different things in the queue. Or maybe is it such that you have your project management platform that you're using, and you're using that to drive what comes next for the theme? Or so like any good task management solution will have the ability to tag or label tasks. So that's where those come into play. Yeah. So if I'm going to use my themes, I'll tag it with that theme. So that way, instead of working by project exclusively, I can say, oh, it's Monday. Monday's writing day. Let me look at all the things that are tagged with writing. Okay. Let me look at all the things that are, because then I'm in that modality, and you get into that state of flow, as Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi has talked about, the idea of moving things. And then the cool thing is that if you do this consistently, and this is the problem a lot of people have, is they try it for a week and they go, it didn't work. Well, you got to do it for an extended period of time, because your brain needs to get used to the idea that, okay,
I need to, if I'm only doing podcasting on Wednesday, I need to have 3 weeks worth of podcasts done so that I can feel comfortable with doing podcasts on Wednesday, right? So it does require discipline, and all of these things are frameworks and structures. And a lot of people get caught up in the whole, well, that means I'm not going to have as much freedom. But anybody who has either raised kids or works in an organization knows that frameworks foster freedom. If you don't have routines and rituals and frameworks and structures, everything falls apart. So I think having this combination of using a calendar for the larger picture stuff and then having the to-do list segmented in a way that makes your productivity personal, it allows you to have this ebb and flow where you could say, you know what, I need to really dig into a project right now. Great. You dig into the project, you come out of it and you go, okay, I did that. It's Monday. Now let's look at what writing I can do. Or it allows you to go, hey, it's Thursday. Thursday's admin day. Let me do all my admin work. I've been interrupted by a meeting. Let me go do this meeting. Okay, I'm done my meeting. Instead of asking yourself, what's the next action? You get to say, oh, it's Thursday. Thursday's admin. Let me go back and see what. So it keeps you moving forward.
And I just want to recognize Bruce asked a question real quick. He says, do any of you use Workflowy? Anybody have an answer to that question? I've never heard of Workflowy.
No, I don't. I pretty much use Microsoft.
Okay.
I've used Workflowy a little bit. I don't find, and there's a great book. I'll have to look it up. Frank, I'll find it and put the link in. Okay. He's written about how to use Workflowy. He's like the Workflowy master. Okay. I like it for outlining. I like it for that, but I don't find it. It's like Evernote. You were saying, Nick, I noticed like in the chat that you use Evernote for keeping lists. Mm-hmm. I use Evernote for keeping like track of ideas and information in my camping box checklist and all that stuff in there. But I don't use it to keep track of anything I have to do because that's where information lives. I use my task app to do that. So I'll find that link while we're chatting and see if I can throw it in there. But I played with it. It's just I think what happens is, and it's interesting you said off the top, Nick, that we use a lot of tech and stuff. And we I used to be very tech centric because I worked in the tech industry. Right. I wrote about it a lot. I'm more focused on the approach than the app now. And that's what happens when you spend time in this space long enough. Apps come and go, right? Yeah. Other than Microsoft Project, which just won't.
Have you used it though, Mike? Have you used MS Project?
I have, but the problem with MS Project for a lot of people is the onboarding and the initially getting into it is so onerous, and it's such a beast that people kind of get. Once you're in it, I know it's quite.
Dude,
good.
you think that's bad? Like Primavera? Are you familiar with Primavera? That is like,
I've not used
man,
Primavera.
that's like Microsoft Project times 100-fold barrier entry type situation.
What I think is going to happen is I think Wunderlist, which was bought by Microsoft, they're going to roll something in there, make more of a project light thing that people can kind of wrap their head around. But no, I'll see if I can find that Workflowy link and throw that in there for you, Bruce.
Nick, there was a question by Hectic Dad about, and I answered it on the live chat of like, how do you handle someday maybe? And so, my thing is, I challenge myself because what I have found is that, I keep putting the someday maybe off and off. And so then I finally ask myself, when I do that too many times, it must not be a priority. It must really not be something I want to do if I continuously put it off. So I try to so I use my Outlook and I use the task manager. And what I try to do is, put things that, like for example, I'm a director of admissions and we're looking at articulation agreements with a couple colleges. It is not a priority of mine right now. It's something that, once, I come back from maternity leave, within the next year. So what I've done is I flagged it as a follow-up, when I get back, maternity leave will be around September, and at that point, a long time. Well, yeah, because,
September, wow.
Well, yeah. And but I've set that flag and, now if I weren't going on maternity leave, I would be able to set it sooner. But the reality is it's just not going to get done before I leave. And so in September, I'll get that flag. And at that point in time, I need to make a decision at this point. Do I now make contact with those universities, or do I need to push it off further? Right. And at some point, if I keep pushing off, then I have to ask myself, why am I pursuing this MOU? Right. If I keep pushing it off, it must not be a priority for me as the director of the office to pursue this. There's something going on there. So I always ask myself, if I can't commit to a date and time in which I'm going to call, and then from that point on, create a timeline by which this will finally, that loop will get closed. then and then I think I had this conversation with you. Why do you keep it on your list? Right? Because it's just it
naturally falls out.
It takes up, that brain space that we were talking about. That why is it on there then? I mean, for me, I guess for me to have something on a list that's been on there for a year, why is it on the list, right? It
is kind of silly. Yeah, I interviewed Tor Refsland. You guys know Tor, right? Yep. Yeah, last week, and now I got to echo crazy. So he said that he's at least in his communication with me, said he uses pretty much calendar for everything, and he kind of leaves a buffer at the end for these sort of extracurricular activities, things that don't necessarily mean as much. It's kind of like blocks them all together, and then he just looks at them at the end of each day or the end of each week and just either pushes them to another time or just kind of like you're saying, it just naturally falls out. If it's not a priority, it just kind of goes away and doesn't necessarily worry about, the someday maybe type stuff. But I guess my question for you guys is, so what happens if you have like the idea of going on vacation? Like I've been talking about going on vacation with friends for 5 years. And I'm like, okay, well, one of these days I'm going to call the friends that I want to take vacation with and pick a place, that kind of stuff. But it's, that's one thing, just like having something that's kind of far out in the future to not lose track of that thought is one thing. But then what if you actually do have a general sense of when you're going to do something? Do you go ahead and plug it in to your calendar, or do you keep track of that, like a reference type of mechanism? How do you guys deal with that? You mean
if you have a sense of the dates that you're going to go?
Yeah, or like the last quarter type stuff versus, October 20th or,
I don't think I'd put it on a calendar unless I had chosen dates for it. But if I've got something like that, I might create a note in Evernote where when I have ideas about that trip, I'll throw it in there. Like, who do I want to invite, or where might we want to go? Or look, here's this article I just saw on the internet of a place I might want to go next time I go to Paris. So I'll throw that in there. But I'm not going to put it on my calendar until we've set dates.
Yeah. Clem says plug it in right here in the chat. He's just so there's obviously some proponents over here for just, put it all on there. And there is like a different school of thought there.
Well, I would plug it in, but I would plug in the action of identifying my friends. Like, what's the holdup? So for me, I'd ask myself, well, what? Okay, because I again, challenging you to say, it's not a priority. If you've been thinking about this for 5 years, right? At some point, my thing is, well, you need to forget about it, right? Because if it was a priority, I know you, and you'd get it done. I mean, when you want something done, you do it. So for me, I would finally either give up on the idea and say, nice idea, but clearly I'm not that vested, or, okay, this has been ongoing. Enough is enough. I'm going to pick, 2 weeks from now, I'm going to sit down for 15 minutes and I'm going to decide who I want to invite. Right. And then from there, let's say I figure that in 5 minutes. Well, heck, why not send an email to everybody really quick, right? And I actually would flag that email for a reminder 2 weeks to say, hey, guys, if you haven't heard from you, is anybody interested? Because if nobody responds, then I'm going to mark that off my list to do and say, nobody wants to take a vacation with me. And then
I'm going to go by myself.
Exactly. And so I would break down the process. And so I would
I'll go with you.
So I would put it on the thanks, Laura. So I would put it on the calendar, but I wouldn't put simply on the calendar, go on vacation with friends, in February of next year. I mean, that's vague. I would break that down and say, well, what are all the steps that need to occur for me to actually say I accomplished that, and then find dates and times, on my calendar to actually chip away at all those tasks,
But those things, that's what I would put in my task manager. I would create a project for vacation with friends and whatever pieces of it I thought of, and I would probably put a defer date out, to, like you use your calendar for. I would, defer it to, 3 weeks from now. And when it comes up, that's when I sit down and do, decide.
When the alert comes up.
Yes. When the alert comes up.
I'm the same. So for example, my buddies and I, we want to do a trip. We do a trip every November because that's when he's off work. So
every November, do you grow it out?
Yeah, no, we don't do this.
No.
You're
dear to my heart.
We're going away from our wives, and my wife would be mortified by a mustache.
Mine was very mortified. Sorry, I digress.
He didn't care. He didn't care.
But for me, I think by putting that in, like the nice thing about having a wall calendar, if you have the ability to have a wall calendar, by the way, totally have one, because it gives you this bird's eye view of the whole year. Like I know right now that if someone was to say, I'd like to take time off in December, or let's go away in December, I'd go, well, no, because half the month my kids are out of school. So no,
it's not going to work.
Like I can make that decision like that. Same thing with April. Like right now, someone was to say, hey, let's go somewhere in April. My mother's going to be in Victoria. I put that in here.
Right.
So if someone says, hey, let's go away. I'm like, nope, my mother's in town for 2 weeks. She's flown all the way from Ontario. She may not be staying with us, but so having that visual there is really important. But the other thing is like Laura, I will say, okay, we want to plan that vacation. And again, a really good task manager, OmniFocus, Asana, Todoist, Trello, all of the ones that most people would use have the ability to have that recur annually. So I have one that says, hey, I want to plan a vacation every year. And I just have all those steps inside of there. So that way I don't have to think about it, which I guess goes back to that whole someday maybe list idea. I don't put due dates on things that, anything that's in here that's an action goes into Todoist. And the reason is because I don't want to have to think about it later. I want it to either prompt me at the appropriate date, like so if I have a date that I want to know about it, or I have a task in Todoist that's called review no date filter. And in Todoist, there's a filter that says no date. So I can go through all of that stuff. And if it's too long, I'll just spend 25. And actually the task says 25 minutes. Yeah. So I do it for 25 minutes. I do a Pomodoro. I look at it all. I decide. And at that point in time, I can decide, do I want to put a date on it? Does it matter anymore? Or sometimes, oh crap, I already did this. Because sometimes that happens too.
Yeah.
But I don't want to. I only see that stuff when I draw my attention to it. And I think that that's the problem a lot of people have is they say, but I know this is on my list. Who cares if it's on your list? If it's on your list, it only, and don't think about when it went on your list. I don't think that's really important. It's when does it come off your list is important. Like if it's been sitting there, I have a task actually, it's funny. I was just in New York and it popped up again. I have a task to do as locational recognition. So I've been told to go to the Frick Museum when I'm in New York. And every time I show up in New York, Todoist says, hey, don't forget to go to the Frick Museum. I still haven't gone. It's been there for 3 years. But the thing is until I complete it, every time I show up in New York, it's going to tell me.
And so you just defer it at that point? If you're not, I'm not going to go on this trip, so you defer it.
I just don't complete it because it'll still remind me. And then when I finally do it, it'll be like, okay, I did it. Like, I don't want to have to think. The only other time I'll think about it, honestly, is if I'm watching a news story and goes, the Frick Museum's closing. I'm like, oh man, or there's this new exhibit at the Frick. That's the only time I'm going to think about it. So why, like, I've thrown this quote around a lot, but your mind's meant to be a factory, not a warehouse.
Right.
So I don't think about expiration dates, any of that stuff. I just think about what do I do with what's in front of me right now, based on either the theme of the month or the day and what's in my task app. And I think that allows me to be, more effective, and then using that consistently builds my efficiency.
So, like, a couple points of clarification, if I could, real quick. Sure. So, when you said it prompts you to go to the Freak Museum, that's like it has your location, your Todoist sees where you're at, and it actually you have it tied to location. So that's I guess that's one thing.
You can have a location in Todoist. You can have both time-based reminders and location-based reminders. Okay. OmniFocus has the same capability as well. There's more and more that are doing that thanks to the wonders of mobile phones.
Definitely. And then when you're scheduling your prompts, if it's a certain task, are you scheduling it for your themed day? Like if it's whatever.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that So basically, like again, I won't be working on podcast stuff till Wednesday of next week now. Because it's whatever I did today is done, and I've got podcasting stuff already scheduled for the next 3 weeks. So it's about being proactive. Like having a themed schedule allows you to be proactive. And because it's flexible and I don't have like, okay, record at this time, do this at this time. It allows me to kind of work with the ebb and flow because I have coaching clients that need to be, delivered to. And I can't just block off times to say, nope, sorry, not going to, I'm going to schedule all that out. I have to give them flexibility. And I know I saw somebody in here saying that they block out the time in their calendar. When I know I'm going somewhere, one of the first things I do is I go into the scheduling tool I use called Schedule Once, and I block out time. Like I say, I'm not going to be around. And I also give myself what are called gap days. So the day before I leave
and the day
after I leave.
I have learned.
No, yeah, because otherwise you're just bombarded. So again, these little frameworks, these little mini systems all built within really help you, because then you don't have to remember, okay, well, I have to set my autoresponder. Well, for what dates? Well, when do I leave? This day. Okay, so the day before. Okay, when do I get back? Okay, the day after. Like those things, it just becomes consistent. And there's this quote that I discovered when I was doing that talk in Texas, where I got to see Laura. You were at my talk, actually, Laura, where I said the Jack Canfield quote. 100% is a breeze. 99% is a bitch. And what that means is, as soon as you leave that window open for that 1%, you open up a whole can of worms to all that stuff. If you say all the time, I'm always taking gap days. If you say I'm not putting due dates on anything that's a someday maybe. Yeah, I'm always going to put modes on my tasks. Those things. I'm going to theme my days. So on Mondays, Tuesdays, those are my overarching focuses for that day. If you do that consistently, then it's easy. As soon as you say, well, you know what? I'll clean the tub on Wednesday. Oh, that's it. You know what I mean? Like that's
get done.
Then or you're going to waste brain cells thinking about when you're going to do it, and that's
and you're more than willing to let somebody else infiltrate that space. If you don't respect your boundaries, you can't expect anybody else to. And the calendar really is just a grid. It's really just a framework already. And block out the time you need. Use it. But I always caution against hyper scheduling yourself, because yes, there are times where the power could go out. There are times where, things can happen that you don't plan for. And a task manager allows you to be more malleable and flexible with it, whereas a calendar creates a lot of rigidity around that. And so you got to be more careful with how you use those two tools. I think they work well together. I think when you start to use one as the other, you can come across a lot of problems.
So, Mike, what theme would you purchase Mike Vardy's wall calendar under? What would that come under?
It would go under errand mode, and it would be under administrative. Yes, absolutely,
admin, right? It's
absolutely. That's where. So if your admin day is Thursday, I expect to see a spike in sales.
That's right. Yeah, everybody watching.
I already have
whenever you're admin.
This is the second year I've gotten it, and it's right there.
I'll have to take a look at it, because I have a whiteboard that I have in my quarters, and within each quarter I have my key. This is for work tasks. I have key activities that typically occur in the first, second, third, and fourth quarter. We operate a July to June fiscal year. So the academic year is a little bit different. And so that just helps me sometimes just to make sure I'm not missing something, as I'm in that particular quarter. And then there's certain tasks that I have staff I oversee. So some of it, it's a matter of triggering a follow-up in my one-on-one or something to make sure that the employees are on task. And so I do think the visual helps.
And I actually start my new year in September, because the kids start school in September. So next year we're going to have the Now Year calendar. Actually, it'll be this year, September. There'll be a September to August version as well, because that's how I operate. And I mean, a lot of parents, Gretchen Rubin operates that way. A lot of parents that have kids in school operate that way. Teachers,
yeah, and we might have to consider that, because this is the first year Carter's in kindergarten. So, we'll have another one now in VPK, which is a voluntary pre-kindergarten program they have in Florida. So we might have to look at something like that. But so the visual, I think, does help. I mean, but what, and I don't hyper schedule myself, because I have buffers.
No, it doesn't sound like you do.
So, but I do. For me, the thing is, I just, and again, I think it's not something I always did, but it's just, I have a tendency now just to forget. I think I have too many things going on, too many kind of balls in the air. And so, it just doesn't work for me to keep something on a to-do list, if indeed it has to get done. I mean, if there's, somebody's expecting a deliverable, whether at home or at work, I have to plug it in, and if somebody walks in my office, it's kind of like, hey, I need that report. I'm like, please wait one moment. I open up my calendar. Hey, when do you need it by? Does that fit with my current schedule? And when people tell me, whenever you can get to it, I just add a date on there, based on my availability and capacity. because I just can't work with those open-ended deadlines. It just doesn't work well for me.
But isn't that the thing though, Mike? I mean, if the system works for her, it's perfect.
Yep.
It's, there isn't a right system.
No, and I imagine that you probably have different color-coded calendars too, right?
Yes.
So you can see which are based on your roles, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, you are essentially keeping a list.
Yeah.
It's just done in a grid fashion.
Yes.
You turn off the one and you see all your stuff that your home role. And then, so, I mean, there's no, it's just a matter of, and I'm glad you don't hyper schedule, because hyper scheduling is when things can, that's, by the way, when you see your calendar that full, you'll know. It's just like seeing your to-do list that full. You'll know. It's how you deal with that. That's the key, right?
Yeah, the flexibility. So can you guys take me back a little bit to when, and maybe you've always been this, organized and productive when it comes to, scheduling stuff, but like what was the, maybe it's just a natural born thing, but what was the deciding point where you needed to make a change? How were you doing it before? Maybe Laura, we could start with you. And then what was that catalyst for getting you to make the change? Do you have any stories behind that?
Well, I mean, I've always been a productivity nerd. I mean, even clear back when I was in like high school, junior high and high school, I've always loved lists. I've always loved calendars. I've always loved notebooks. I've always, that's just the kind of person I am. And I'm older than all of you. So my nerdiness predates things like iPhones and even Palm Pilots, although I had a Palm Pilot when
I did too.
Yeah, I loved my Palm Pilot. I just thought I was the coolest thing on.
I know. But you take that stylus.
Yeah, but before that, it was the Daytimer, the notebook I carried around with me everywhere. And before that, it was a calendar on the wall. But I've always been one to, put things, places I had to be and stuff on a calendar. When my kids were young and I was home with them full time, we had a calendar on the refrigerator. And everybody knew if it's not on the calendar, it's not happening. Because, that's just when you have 5 kids or more. For some of us on the here.
Yeah, for some of us, maybe one in particular, potentially.
Yeah. But I've always done that, and because I'm a tech nerd too, as the technology sort of advanced, like I said, Palm Pilot, and then I had my BlackBerry, and then I had my iPhone, and the more projects that I've had, kind of balls in the air, the more that, and I can't point to a day, but as I got more things, more projects going, and to me, a project is any task that has more than one step to it. That's kind of when I switched from just using a piece of paper on my desk to a digital task or project manager, just because I need to be able to look at it different ways. I don't like rewriting it every day, and the timing of it all. But so that's.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks for sharing that. Mike, what about you? Was it Costco that put you over the edge?
Well, Costco was the place where I kind of got into productivity, because I was trying to balance being the guy who ran the food court area where the hot dogs are like $1.50, and then the chicken area, which is at the back of the warehouse, where they're like, so I had to go back and forth consistently.
Who doesn't love Costco hot dogs? Just put that out there.
Come on. They're amazing. Only place I found a cheaper hot dog is IKEA.
That is true. Yes. I was there recently. You get like what, 2 for?
Yeah, the same price, I think. But they're like tiny. But the thing is I found that's, with that going on, as well as me trying to build, a comedy career of sorts, as well as, being newly married with a kid on the way, like I was trying to balance all that stuff out. And so I gravitated towards productivity, especially, like the stuff that Covey was talking about, and then really into David Allen's getting things done. But what happened to me, and the big change was GTD was great and I loved it, but then I started to see all of the lists that GTD kind of had me creating. And it was hard it felt like I wasn't ever really getting past that 10,000 feet that he talks about in the book. Right. And I wanted to kind of say, okay, this is where most people they get to the point where I want to hybrid a system up. Like, how do I make all of this stuff work? And the calendar was such a small element, and it's still, I don't know, Laura, maybe what your thoughts are, but it's such a small element of getting things done. Like it really is just like put your date specific appointments on there and that's it. Like only in recent editions, as you said, even if they are with yourself, like initially they were just like cut and dried. If you have an appointment with somebody else, put it in there. So I felt I had to have some kind of hybrid solution that not only allowed me to use the digital tools I enjoyed, but use them in a way that allowed me to compartmentalize my lists so I could easily answer the question, what do I feel like doing right now? Like, you know, which is why I'm running my own business in the first place. Like I should be able to reasonably answer that question. And it doesn't mean I always get to do what I want to do, but I was tired of seeing the, what do I have to do? It was more, I wanted to be more of a, what do I need to do? And then I wanted something I could use on paper. I wanted something that I could put on a wall and see. I wanted to be able to have something that I could connect with simply and easily. And that's when I said, hey, you know, instead of working by context, what if we incorporate themes and modes into things where people can easily glom onto those a lot easier? What if the calendar was more than just a, hey, here's what do I have to, here are the 3 meetings I have today. What if it's like, when I'm done those meetings, the calendar can kind of tell me what my overarching focus for the day is. So that's what kind of propelled me to this new, you know, the Now Year method, which is what I teach and what I talk about. And so that's kind of what pushed me in that direction. And honestly, once I embraced that, and that was tough. I just wrote a whole series of posts about why I left GTD behind. Yeah. And oh my gosh, like it was a newsletter series initially, but some of that, like one guy wrote like, and this is where I leave you. I'm like, okay. You know, but that's fine. As you're saying, if your system works, go for it. But that's kind of how I came up with the idea of like, how do I leverage the calendar and leverage my technology and leverage the fact that I want to be in front of somebody sometime and just be able to write down like MAPS, here are my tasks, here are my notes, and not have somebody go when they're giving me a task, hey, what are you doing? Oh, I might be tweeting. I might be emailing. Like I love to have paper in front of me that tells me that people, when they see you write something down, it looks kind of like they're like, oh wow, he's kind of paying. He's paying attention. Yes. He's not texting or checking his Twitter or anything like that. So I wanted something that would make all that work, and now I'm doing it. So that's kind of what that's what pushed me in this direction.
Oh, that's great, man. So I guess what about those like just the task that absolutely the 100% front of mind, they're just really critical deadline type stuff. Do you block out time for those tasks, those hyper focus kind of tasks, the things that you know?
It's funny. Tom mentioned in the question here, he goes, let me talk about themes for each month. I theme my months too.
Okay.
So if I have a big project that I'm working on, it normally falls into a monthly theme. So for example, I'm working on a course for the Now Year method right now. And oddly enough, it started in March. March 1st was the first day where so again, it's like, all right, what's my daily theme? Oh, it's writing. Well, what do I feel like writing today? I don't really want to write the newsletter. Okay, well, what's your monthly theme? Oh, it's the Now Year stuff. Okay, I should work on the course stuff then. So again, it's kind of guiding my brain to, because then over 31 days, I make measured progress on that deadline, right? When I have a talk coming up in Atlanta in May, I have a task that says every single day, work on, you know, elements of that talk that you've scheduled it on. So for example, again, Monday and Tuesday, writing days, that's where I'll be working on that stuff. So I'm a big believer in not worrying about due dates, right, and making every day a due date. So if it's something urgent that's come up, like you have to have it in, like I had an interview with McClellan's magazine and they called me and I was on vacation and they said, well, not on vacation, but I was out of town. And they said, all right, we want to interview you tomorrow. All right. I shove everything aside. I dive headfirst into it. And that's what I focus on. Kind of like a project, right? That's what I would do. And then once I come out of that, it's like, all right, let's go back to the usual way of doing things. Let's work by mode, work by theme. So that's kind of how I do it. Any big projects, I'll normally theme my week, or better still, theme my month. And I know Tom says that he's found it helpful. I think having monthly themes, and not theming every month either. Right. Keep that in mind. If you theme every month, then you're, again, feeling like every month you've got some big thing to do. I don't theme this year. June, July, and August have no themes at all because my kids are out of school. So I want to hang out with my kids. Mm-hmm. So I think that having those there are also great waypoints for me. That's how I do it.
It sounds like your monthly themes need to be cross functional enough to where they blend well with your daily themes, right? I mean, not so specific, I guess. Right?
Yeah, like the Now Year course, I can do writing for it. I can do audio and video for it because I can do administrative work for it. And then, of course, I can do learning about it. So I could do research that falls under learning for Fridays. And then Sundays about founder leadership. So how do I make this event? So you have to make sure that they kind of cross all those themes. And it's interesting because with the Now Year method, you could start with a daily map, which allows you to work, day to day if you want and not really jump into the daily themes. Or you can go all the way to the top and start with the 3 words, which are also on the calendar, and then go down to monthly themes. And then if you want weekly themes, and then daily themes. So it works either as a bottom up or top down approach. So that's what really helps me kind of move those things forward regularly.
So Nick, your question was if you have a project with a deadline. So then I just work backwards. I mean, if it's due, March 30th. And so what I'm doing is I am actually looking at my calendar and saying, it might be that, Friday, March 4th, I'm going to spend 2 hours, working on this specific task, that I've outlined in order to meet that goal of completing the project by the 30th. And so I'll look at my 29 days because it's due, the 30th, and look at when I can actually get those tasks done. And I actually put that on my calendar. So if it requires me drafting documents, calling people, whatever it requires, do I lose sound?
Oh, you're back.
No, I could hear the whole time.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I could hear the whole time.
So, so that's what I do is I would sit there and identify all the tasks and then find specific days and times in which I'm going to accomplish those tasks. That's usually what I do. And
I do something similar at the office, in part because I am forced to use Outlook for the calendar at the office, and it's visible to other people at the firm, my secretary and other people. And so if I'm looking at my calendar and I know I've got to get a particular contract drafted and delivered to the client by, Thursday afternoon, and I'm looking at where I have meetings and stuff, and I don't want to get it filled up with meetings, I will block out on my calendar, 2 hours on Wednesday morning to draft that. So anybody that looks at my calendar will see she's busy. But that's an appointment that's serving 2 functions. It's keeping other people out of my hair. And it is an appointment with me to get that project done. And I don't have to worry about it till then. I can work on other stuff because I know I've blocked out time, not like right up against the deadline, but before the deadline, with adequate times to get it done. And I always try to do it ahead of time, well before the deadline, because things happen. You get a phone call and there's an emergency, and or you get a flat tire on the way to the office on the morning that you were planning to get that thing done so you could deliver it to the client by 2:00, and you're hosed. So.
Yeah, and I have to protect my time at work. I mean, because I serve on our executive council leadership, and so I could get called into meetings. And luckily I'm not at a dean level because I swear all they do is go to meetings. I don't know how they actually get anything done. But if it's not on my calendar, my admin can go ahead and plop in, a meeting, and she's like, "Well, it was free," and I'm like, "Well, mentally, I wanted to get something done," and she's like, "Well, I didn't know that," and so. Over time, I've just had to carve out that time, and I do it also because if I get an email on Monday saying, "Hey, when are you free on Wednesday morning for a call about this other thing?" And I may not be thinking about this contract that's due, but if I've got it on my calendar, I can say, "No, I've got a commitment at that time. Can we do it, Wednesday afternoon or something?"
I was going. When I was in corporate, I was really into kind of hacking corporate because I didn't really, Nisach. I didn't necessarily have aspirations to be there for my whole career. So I used to just block out the whole day and make people just come to me and say, "Hey, I see you're busy." I'm like, "Yeah, I got a lot of stuff going on. What, if you need to get together, then I'll make room for you, So like it totally just
that's setting boundaries.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Awesome though. Because if you set people are more, it's like the same reason why, like when I worked at the film festival, our graphic designer would wear headphones, like not buds, but full cans.
Not plugged into anything.
No, he wasn't listening to a damn thing. He was just, no one came up to him.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, Graham Alcott, the productivity ninja, suggests that people, if they want to block out time, make up a project name and put it in their calendar. If they need to actually block, like, Project Neptune. It's like, what's that?
Yeah.
Do that. And that's fine. It's hard to do it for a whole day. But I mean, what I've done with some clients is if they can't theme their days, and some of them can't, they're just too dynamic. I'm like, well, then theme your mornings or your afternoons. And I said, are you in your role, make your mornings about serving others, and then take a lunch break and literally leave your desk and go for lunch, and then make the afternoon self-serving mode, which oddly enough, if you do that, indirectly you are still serving others, because if you do your stuff, then you're going to be serving others. So I've said do that, and they're like, and for some people that's how they have to work. They can't say, okay, Monday's this type of day, Tuesday's this type of day, but they could say in the mornings. Like, how awesome would it be to walk around to your team and go, hey, you need anything from me? Or here's that thing, and they're like, wow, look at you, you're all over in the mornings, and then in the afternoons you're like, okay, I'm in my own zone right now. You've already dealt with all of them. And one of the other things I've suggested to clients is, and I started doing this here. My son, when he was 3, I used to put a door knocker, because my office was in the bedroom, like one of those privacy things that you get at hotels, would hang on our door. My son knew that if that was hanging on the door, don't come in and bug daddy. They're like, daddy is busy doing work.
That's key.
I still use it to this day. I've actually sent some to clients. Like when I've been traveling at hotels, I'll like grab the do not disturb sign and say, I'm going to mail it to you. And I say, put it on your office door. Yeah. And people will look at it and go, oh, all right. Like a closed door means one thing, but having that like do not disturb sign, I'll come back later.
But Mike, you can't do that in cubicles. You can't do that in cubicles. People just laugh at it.
That's where you wear the headphones.
That's where you wear the headphones.
Kind of. I mean, I can get it. Oh gosh, hacking corporate is like a passion of mine. But I'll say one thing that sprung to mind when you're talking about the do not disturb sign in the Satch. We need to get this thing back. Is the okay to wake light? It's like a light that lights up and let your kids know when they can leave the room. And it broke like 2 years ago. And ever since then, we've had to deal with this. And again, we need to put it in our admin themed day, right? To actually order this stinking light. But man, it's brilliant, because I mean, it sets that clear boundary with your kids. So like, it's all about getting these creative things. Yeah.
Right. Because you've mentioned it, and I'm the one who orders through Amazon. So here's the thing.
Yeah, she's the home productivityist.
So I'm not completely sold that it's going to work. So it's kind of like in the back of my mind, where it's really in the frontal cortex of Nick's mind, where he's like,
it is.
He's 6 years old. They share a room. I just don't know if I'm going to win that battle. So it's on my kind of list, because I'm kind of not really committed to it yet. But no, I do agree. And I think, the other thing is to be transparent, with employees, or, if you're working at home. I mean, Nick, my mom watches my youngest, and she had to clearly tell him, while I'm here, I'm not here, and she'll call me first if there's an issue before she calls him, because, he's at work, and has less flexibility, at least at this point in time, in trying to build his company, where, if there's an issue, I have time. I've been there, 6 years and whatnot. So, so I do share with the staff, that, I have certain key days, that I'm themed for recruitment, file review, whatnot. And so one of the things that helps them know that if you send me an email that pertains to that theme, I'm likely to get back to you, within that day. Or, hey, it's not that you can't approach me. So if you have a question about recruitment, then guess what? That, Mondays are the best day to reach me, because my mind's already thinking in that mode. And then the other, is I also, tell people I'm not checking my email all day. And so, if it's critical, you should knock on my door, call me. Email is not meant to, prompt me to, like that, what do they call that with the cows, the poke? It's not like a, yeah, right. Like if you really need something that's urgent, it should be a phone call or a knock on my door. Right. And so, I've just created that culture, and I encourage my staff to the same. And, and this is, I even share with, my dean who I report to, this is kind of my approach, and there's times where he'll want me to suddenly go off campus, and I'm kind of wondering, why the heck would he want me to meet with these stakeholders? But, he's my boss. So I'll clearly say, hey, today I have earmarked for file review, ultimately means more students in our program, right? More tuition. You let me know what the priority is. Because for me, the priority is to secure,
put it back on them, right?
Right. Yeah. And, and usually he's like, Oh no!
Yeah.
Go ahead.
See, and
have at that.
And you're an edge case in a lot of these situations, because a lot of people are just like, they'll just take whatever's thrown at them. They know. I mean, I've had a lot of people say, well, my boss has given me 8 more things to do. I go, well, go with the other 8 things already, and then say, hey, you've given me these 8. Which of these 8, now 16, do you want me to work on? Because they are getting a bunch of stuff from other. Like, the thing is, you can't assume. And I love the fact you share it with your staff, because what that also does is create this culture of, hey, maybe I should theme my days too. But the thing is that you can't assume that people are going to follow your methodology or the way you do things, because they may not be wired to do the same thing, because there is a personal component to it. But also the fact of the matter is they've got a lot of responsibilities and things that are going in their head too. That's why you get emails every 15 minutes from that one person, because they're just like, that's how they deal with it. So
but Mike, you can change culture though. You can. I mean, everybody's gonna do it their own way, but you can empower people to change the way that they deal with that. I mean, sorry to cut you off.
No, you totally can, but you have to remember that before you decide to take that step, you better have a better understanding of where everybody is coming from first, and not say, okay, like, start to create those boundaries yourself, and then, as I've said, respect those boundaries yourself before, because if you don't, no one else will.
Right.
Yeah, you got to be an example, man. I mean, I remember, like, when it comes to boundaries, I'm getting fired up, and I want to just real quick recognize that it's 10:01. This is supposed to only go an hour, so I want to just be mindful of your time. If you guys want to drop off, completely okay.
Let's get to wrap up mode, because I'm getting hungry.
I get it.
What time?
I'm on the West Coast, so it's 7:00.
Oh my goodness.
Oh wow! Thank you. Yeah.
No
Says yes. Dinner time. You jumped on. That's awesome, man. Mike, I have totally a new respect for you, man. Not that I didn't respect you before. That's awesome. So when it comes to boundary, it is not just with colleagues though. It's with supervisors. So I had my boss when I was working for my company, and maybe my supervisor at the time is watching, if he is, whatever. But so he retired, and I got a new supervisor. He had a reputation for being a micromanager. Well, I had a good reputation in the company for performing well and all that kind of stuff. So as soon as I knew, I was actually I had the day off when I found out the news that he was taking over, and the very next day, first thing in the morning, I said, hey, so and so, I want to meet with you. I just kind of want to just get on the same page with how I typically operate and how I can support your organization. And I basically said, and I put it out there, I'm like, look, I'm only at my desk 60, maybe 50% of the time. That's just how I like to have the flexibility. I'm gonna do a really good job for you, but don't expect me to be in my desk. And when in 2007, when the 4-hour work week came out, and Tim Ferriss put that thing about only checking email twice a day and having it in your voicemail and then having it in your autoresponder, I didn't go the autoresponder route until about 3 or 4 months before I left corporate. And after I actually implemented that system, I wish I would have implemented that 3 years prior. But I mean, it really works. The voicemail I did. People will call up and I hear them go, did he just say he only checks his voicemail twice a day? I hear people say that. But like, the quicker you can implement those, like right off the bat, new manager, new job, whatever, this is how I operate. I want to work with you. I want to make your organization well. This is how I'm most effective. I just want to let you know that up front. Let's work together. And then they might not agree with it, but I tell you, man, over time, if you're consistent about what you believe in and that sort of thing, like no desk time, like cubicle nation kind of thing, like let me get away and go hide. I used to hide in conference rooms literally 50% of the time, or just whatever. It's kind of something that I did, but like, you really can create that example, because where they'll fight you because they're just so into just that, like, oh, you're working banker's hours, or you decided to work, you're only working half days, right? 12 hours, all that stupid stuff that people in corporate used to say. Like, if you own that and you're like, I only work half days. I'm trying to get down to quarter days. Like, I used to say stuff like that. And yeah, you'd get that. But over time, if you just kind of own it and you're consistent, and the people that give you the hardest time, they start respecting
if you're producing.
That's the thing.
If you're producing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When I left Costco, I was the door greeter when I left. Like, I worked my way up to management level, and by the time I left, I was door greeter. I was a great door greeter. I kicked ass greeting, because I knew that first off, I totally disrupted the company at that level, at least in that building, because they were like, why but you were going up and now you want to go down. Well, no, that's not how I looked at it. I looked at it as I was changing gears. And by having me on the front door and also knowing how the system worked, I've been with the company long enough. If I said I want to go work the door, they couldn't really say no. By the time I left, like the two guys that were working the front door, one of them is the lead singer in a country band here in town that's been nominated for a couple of awards in Canada, and me. And so we're the two guys. We love it because our bandwidth is so low. Where they were like, "Hey, how's it going? Come on in, check da da da." They're like, "These are the two happiest guys here." Why? Because we were not focused on the bad that may come with any kind of those jobs or whatever. And we weren't caught up in the middle management component that might be there. So yeah, I mean, but you have to do your job really well if you want to have those boundaries and have people respect them, because they will look. Some people, not everybody, but they will look for ways to circumvent that because you're going against the status quo. And if you decide that you want to do something that's non-conformist in the words of Chris Guillebeau, then all of a sudden people are going to look at you and say, well, how do I disrupt that because this guy's he's not following, or this woman's not following protocol. So make sure you cover your bases and do a really excellent job, no matter what you do.
Absolutely. But I mean, as my coach tells me, Greg Faxon, he's like, you need to have very high engagement but low attachment, and that's what I learned. I think the last 4 years of corporate is like, I'm gonna kick butt for you like nonstop. I'm gonna give you all I have, but if this goes away tomorrow, I'm completely cool with it. Like maybe it was just the fact that I knew I want to be an entrepreneur, but that really, really helps, by the way. But like, if you're really tied to I guess the point is, if you're in corporate and you want to work your way up, then the low attachment thing is key. You cannot that cannot be about you. And I think the quicker the people who are watching that are in corporate, and you can kind of get that through, I guess, in your mind, is the low attachment factor will help you excel because you'll perform well because you don't have that extra pressure, in my opinion. Because I've seen a lot of different roles as an engineer, as a supply chain manager, project manager.
And then you'll have the freedom to use your calendar or task manager any way you see fit.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. So it's 10:07.
See what I did?
You did.
Yes,
Mike, you are a pro, dude. You're such a pro.
You put on that.
Such a pro, man. Thank you. Well, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. I'm having a blast with you guys. I don't know, Nastach, I might hang out, see if anybody else wants to jump on. I know you probably want to get back to Wash Wednesday because you're theming the night. Got to finish the laundry. But I'll hang out for a few minutes if anybody wants to jump on or answer questions or anything like that.
Hey, Nick, thanks for having me.
I don't have plans to.
Thanks so much, Mike. It's been awesome, man.
Yeah, I'll gladly hop on anytime. Let me know and I'll just make sure I'll do crockpot stuff.
Yeah, just bring dinner. Bring dinner, eat. It'll be cool. We'll have a potluck. A virtual potluck.
I crock-pot last night, so it made dinner easy. We had quesadillas with the pulled pork, right?
Nice.
And I actually left work 30 minutes early, so ensure I had some buffer in there to get some of this done before I jumped on.
Now look who's wrapping it up. Look at that.
I know. And I put that on my calendar. Didn't you ask me? Nick, didn't you ask me yesterday, the other day? He goes, you're going to be on that blab. And I'm like, it's Wash Wednesday. He's like, no. This is about the to-do list in the calendar. You have to be on.
You got to be there.
Yep.
And I immediately pulled up the calendar and said, okay, well, I can leave at 4:00 and then I could get this done. And so boom.
By the way, I can now check off that dinner was cooked in Todoist now too. So we're all set.
Wow.
Everybody's happy.
All right.
Everyone.
All right, guys. Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye, Laura.
Thank you, man. All right. We got an open seat. Anybody wants to jump on? I'm sure Hectic Dad will want to be the first person to jump on. Oh, Nastash jumped off too. Look at that. She just kind of slid out of there very conveniently.
She beat me out the door.
Tell you what. Clem, are you still on? I know, Clem, you're shooting, aren't you? I still see his pic. Yeah, he's still on there. If you want to jump on. I know Deb is still on. Bruce, anybody want to call in? Anybody at all? All right. Well, Laura, you and I. Oh, here we go. Here's Bruce. Good deal. I don't want to lock the seat by accident again. Clem and Bruce are calling in. Cool deal.
All right. I'm going to back out, then let you guys
You're going to back out? All right, Laura. Thanks so much for joining.
Talk to you later.
Good seeing you.
What's up, man?
Been awesome. Appreciate it. Hey, what's up, Clem? Bruce,
how
you doing, buddy?
I'm
doing great. Doing great.
Doing great.
So hopefully it's been a value-add conversation so far.
Yeah.
Hi, Laura.
Great.
I was enjoying that part about the whole limiting your hours and limiting your time that you're dedicating to. All right. Okay, sorry.
So,
but like I decided to limit my days of work to 15 days, and in my industry, that was like unheard of. And people
15 days a month.
15 days a month.
Okay.
And people heard me say that, and they were like, "That's insane! Like, how can you do that? That's not what we do." And I'm like, "Well, that's what I do." And then just recently, it was limited back to it was limited down to 10 days a month. And once again, it's like that doesn't make any sense, but that's what works for the family. That's what works.
You're working on the
for
right
us.
things. You're not just working on stuff for the sake of you're being deliberate about how you're spending your time. That's what it's all about, man.
Right. Yeah. When Nasach just got off, I was talking to my director, and I asked him, I was like, "Do you have a specific number of days to pay your bills for the month? You know, have you already figured that out?" Because what people will do, they'll just work every single day in the mindset of, well, you know, it's feast or famine. You know, you got to take it while you can get it. But if you establish yourself as, okay, this is what I do. This is what's important to me. I just feel like the work will come. You know, if you're good at what you do, you'll get the offers no matter what season it is, no matter what time it is, time of the year. Just
and Clem, and I'll just introduce you guys to Bruce. Maybe you guys introduce yourself real quick, but Bruce is a mindfulness person. What you said is a very mindful kind of activity, right? You have a prosperous mindset there. You're like, no, I'm going to do what's right for my family. I'm going to work when I need to work, and whatever comes will come. But Bruce, go ahead and introduce yourself, man.
Yeah, Bruce Langford here. Yes, I'm a mindfulness coach and have a podcast, Mindfulness Mode. And you're absolutely right. It's really great to just set the bar that way from the very beginning and make it, just put it out there in a very respectful way, and then people will respect you for it. And it's just the way we all should do things, really. And it helps make life go a lot smoother and a lot easier.
Most definitely. And Clem, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Clem Harrod. I'm I am a freelance independent contractor for Fox Sports and a video projectionist as well.
And what is a video projectionist for those who may not be in the audio video world?
A video projectionist. I travel from convention to convention, setting up their widescreen projectors and traveling all across the country, dealing with 4K projectors. Yeah. You know.
And you've been, and just so everybody knows, you've been concussed by NBA players in the past by kneeling down on the court and that kind of stuff. It's always interesting.
Yeah. I'm in the interview room right now. Everybody else is
in the background. Very cool, man. Well, and I know there's a lot of new people on. So my name is Nick Snap. I have a podcast called the Make It Snappy Productivity Show. Just my name, but I do try to make it snappy in everything that I do. And this is the weekly blab that we do. So I'm excited to have you guys on. We had a really great discussion. Thanks again to Mike and Laura, and my beautiful wife, Nasach, who's 7 weeks away from giving birth. We're,
right
just
around the corner.
Every week. Right around the corner, man. It's coming quick. No, I learned a lot, though. I think, it's like, there's so many different ways you can do it. And you got to find, that's the thing that's tricky about the productivity space. And that's why we can talk about it so much, is because there's no right answer for, getting things done. There's no one-stop shop. And that's why it's interesting to have these conversations. I was moving away from having lists and stuff like that, and just kind of hyper scheduling calendar a little bit. And like the things we talked about, it was just giving yourself that freedom, that what's the word I'm looking for? Just the flexibility to kind of ease the burden off your mind. It's a really powerful thing to do. So I don't know, Bruce, do you have any, what is your strategy for getting the right things done and being mindful?
Well, just to reiterate what you were saying, it was really great to hear everybody's different opinion, because everybody is different about this. And I find for me, it helps to block things out. And once I block things out, then it takes my mind off all those other things that I know I'm going to try to achieve that day. And I also try to do theme days as well. And I really like when I'm doing a writing day, I'm just doing a writing day. And I know I don't have to worry about my podcast. I don't have to think about any of the admin stuff that I'm working on. I just work on the writing. And so it just helps clear my mind for the one thing. So I really agree with that.
Yeah. No doubt. And I didn't get to touch on it when Mike and Laura were on, but I'm experimenting recently. If you've seen any of the stuff I've been putting out with this mega batching theme, I've called it's my own name. I'm not sure even where I might have heard it somewhere, but this concept of, okay, if I not only theme my days, but theme my weeks to where I'm getting, so for example, the podcast, getting basically everything I need to do for the podcast done in 1 week, like a month's worth of podcast episodes from start to finish, getting it, knocking it all out. And then, the following week could be a strategy week, or I'm doing all my coaching 1 week and those sort of things, like really, really batching those things together to get them scheduled that way is something that I'm toying with. And the problem that I found is that you got to be ahead, like way far ahead before you do that. You almost got to have the whole next week as if you're not working, so that you can kind of get all caught up to implement, because you need to kind of be one step ahead to implement that thing. But I think it could be pretty powerful if we group those things together and theme that way. It's not really a calendar versus a list sort of discussion. Maybe it's a discussion for another blab, but an interesting concept nevertheless. So.
Yeah, I do that too. I try to get about a month's worth of podcast episodes all in the can. And right now I don't have hardly any in the can. So I'm kind of at that point of my schedule where I've got a whole list of about 20 people I'm going to interview, but I haven't started doing it yet. So in the next few days, I'll be doing a lot of interviews.
Yeah. I imagine the hardest would be to sort of mega batch, like writing. That would be tough, because writing takes a lot of focus, and sometimes you're in the mood and sometimes you're not. So if you limit yourself, and Clem just dropped up, but limit yourself to a certain fixed period of time, I could see where that'd be a very stressful thing to do. Kind of want to give you. I couldn't see possibly doing that with writing, because I'm vlogging every week too, and it's like, man, it's quite a burden. Have you heard of Pomodoro? Absolutely. 25-minute Pomodoros. That's to get you in the flow for writing. Yeah, I don't know. Is there any particular if you want to? I think it's Jason. Jason, if you want to jump on and talk about how you might use Pomodoros for writing, that'd be an interesting conversation to have. But to kind of get the ball rolling. But yeah, I use Pomodoros all the time. Just if there's something that I know I need that hyper focus and I don't want to commit to doing it for long periods of time. And by the way, it's not a good thing to commit to doing anything for a long period of time without taking a break. And I think from a mindfulness perspective, Bruce, you could probably comment on that.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. It's really great. It keeps your focus going a lot better if you actually do take that 5-minute break every 25 minutes and just get up and stretch and get some different air. It just makes a big difference. So I totally believe in the Pomodoro apps as well. It really helps me. Yeah. And
thanks, Matthew, for joining. Well, I don't know. It's, I think there's no right or wrong way. I think the methodology that was laid out when I talked to Tor on my interview of him, Tor Refslin, last week, where he had the methodology of basically blocking out certain periods of time on his calendar for almost flexible tasks. That was very attractive to me, to give you the freedom to knock out whatever it is you felt like working and not being so constrained. But I think the overarching theme, whether it's a list or a calendar, is to have that flexibility, and not being so constrained to where it stresses you out. And that's Jason says he can't find his laptop. No, it's no big deal. We've been at this here for an hour 20. We probably should wrap it up here in a few minutes. I think I'm starting to feel a little bit of a fatigue set in here because it's 10:19. Bruce, what time is it where you're at?
Yeah, it's let me see. It's almost let me check here. Okay, it's 10:15.
Yeah. Okay. So we're in the same time zone then.
Yeah, that's right.
But with that, Bruce, I don't know. You want to wrap it up and
sure.
We'll continue the discussion. Any
great discussion.
For sure. If anybody has any comments or feedback for what you would like to talk about next week, I have a couple ideas myself. Please send me an email. You can send it to nick@makeitsnappyshow.com or hit me up on Twitter @thesnappyshow. And what did the survey say? what did the survey? Oh, about lists versus calendars. Well, the survey said that there's no right or wrong. I think that most of the discussion centered around you can use a task manager in conjunction with your calendar to be pretty much the optimal level of effectiveness. But I think the overarching theme, like we're saying, is have that flexibility to not hyper schedule yourself and stress yourself out doing so. That's kind of what I got out of the conversation. Good guys, it's been a blast. Thank you again to Mike Vardy. This has all been recorded, so I'll post this to my YouTube channel. It's called the Make a Snappy Productivity Show YouTube channel. I guess that's what it's called. And it's all posted as blab to that. And please join us next week. We'll have something really interesting to talk about. So
awesome. Great. It's great to be on. Thank you very much, Nick, for inviting me on. And just remember, just live in the moment and don't stress out about what you're not doing right now. Just think about what you're accomplishing, and that makes all the difference. Yes. There's no need to stress out about all the things we're not getting done. So, yeah. All right, Bruce. Well, hey, thanks so much for jumping on, and hopefully we'll see everybody next week. Yeah. You guys have a great night. All right. Bye. Good night.